Melissa.
All right, so good afternoon. It's lovely to see you all. We were counting down the minutes, couldn't wait to meet again, so thank you for being here. This is our second meeting, and we're just so pleased that you were able to attend again. So you already know us, but once again, Irene Parisi is our Chief Academic Officer and my supervisor. And I am the Reading Literacy Director, Melissa Hickey, for those who may not know me. I would just like to go over the last time we met, we talked about norms and creating this community online and virtually. So here's just a reminder of things to which we agreed. The first was to keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking, and then unmute, but as in all meetings, we will alert you when you're talking and you're on mute. Keep your video on so we can see your faces, especially because we don't know everyone quite yet. There are some people who are appointed to the council that are new to us. So welcome, and we really want to get to know you. Use the chat if you have questions and to keep the conversation going. Leslie is the person who has been sending you the invitations and the information. She will be letting people in. So when you see people coming in, please be assured that she is letting people in. So using the chat, raise your hand if you have something you want to say and really want to share with all. And then, of course, feel free to use all the fun emoji icons to express. At our last meeting, Stephen was the leader with that. So if I was to, let's see, can I give a star using my icons? Well, I'll give him a heart. He can feel my love for using all of them last time. So thanks for that. So I'm going to turn it over now to Leslie to do a roll call, and then we'll go over the norms.
Okay, roll call. Dr. Maureen Burmett, Dr. Michael Coyne.
I do know that he was unable to make it today due to a prior commitment, so he sends his apologies, and I promised that we would catch him up.
Okay. Dr. Margie Gillis.
Here.
Kimberly Healy.
Here.
Stephen Hernandez.
Here. Yep.
Dr. Melissa Jenkins.
Here.
Christina Kingsbury. Stephanie Lockhart. Francis Rabinowitz.
Here.
Lisa Thomas. I see you. Okay.
Oops.
I see you.
I'm here.
Okay.
Hold
Christina. Christina Tights.
Here.
Roll call has been taken.
All right, thank you so much. Did you see the chat now that Maureen is here and she was on silent? She is here.
I will have her mark her as present.
All right, thank you so much. We do have some other visitors from the state. You may be seeing their names and pictures. So my colleagues, Laura, Desi, they're both here, and Matt Falconer is behind the scenes. Please know that this is recorded and people are watching us. I heard that there was a watching party in one district where everyone got together and watched the last meeting. So that's pretty exciting to hear and to share. So going back to our PowerPoint, we'll just revisit the council norms that we were discussing, as well as the decision-making process, as we will be making some decisions later in our meeting. So The norms that we talked about previously were about participating equitably, just making sure everyone is sharing the air, active listening and having respect and assuming those positive intentions. Decision making, we talked about how this is a group where, for example, in a minute or two, we're going to be looking at the minutes from the next meeting. We don't need to do a full quorum and, have all of the procedures in place with Robert's rules. But we do have, and we talked about a decision-making process in which we talked about the consensus and the agreement, ensuring your voice is heard, etc., and then also about these gradients of agreement. So moving on to the next slide. And then also, I'd like to talk about the minutes from the last meeting. You did get them in your email, and they are posted on our dedicated webpage. Were there any questions, comments, clarifications necessary? Leslie is also taking notes, so she will be writing these down for us. So let's start with that first. Any questions, clarifications, or edits that need to occur?
Not seeing any, Melissa, or anything in the chat.
Okay, nor am I. All right, well then, we will move forward with the minutes as they are to move from a draft version to a final approved version. Thank you all very much. Is there anyone who does oppose this for any reason? Irene, do you see any hands up, anything in chat? All right, great. All right, so moving right along. As you can see by this gorgeous graphic, we do have our designated website and our beautiful image all around our Center for Literacy Research. Now, just a reminder of our purpose as a council. So first of all, as you know, I am standing in for the center director that will be hired and actually be leading the council. But until that time, I will be here, which I'm just thrilled about the opportunity. So thank you all for that again. The roles and function for the council, as you recall, is to develop and publish the annual goals and meet at least once every 2 months. You will be consulting and supporting the director for the Center for Literacy Research and Reading Success, and once again supporting not only the director but the work of the center and the legislation. So, oops, sorry, that startled me. We have another guest in the midst. What I'd like to really spend the majority of the work on would be the documents we sent to you. Before I do that, Irene, is there anything else that you feel like that you would like to share?
Absolutely. Thank you, Melissa, and good afternoon, everyone. The reason why this image is here is just to reaffirm our commitment to the implementation of evidence-based reading and the science of literacy, science of reading. And one of the key updates is that we are actively in the recruitment process, and interviews will be conducted tomorrow and next week. And so as we continue to go through that recruitment process, we do have a couple of members of our council here that will be participating in that interview process. We will keep you informed, but we're super excited that we're engaging in that recruitment process and conducting interviews. So as Melissa shared, we're here filling in for the director, and once that person is onboarded, we can present that director to you. So that's where we are right now. We wanted to give you that important key update.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so moving on. As part of our process today, what Irene and I would like to do is we're consulting with you as the council about a draft process for the program review. One of the first deliverables per the legislation is that there are at least five programs or curricula put forward for districts to be mandated to be used. So Leslie sent each of you the draft open review process for districts and publishers. Just so you know, you may have, for those of you in the districts or familiar with the work done before, you may have recognized many of the steps here. That's because what we did is we modeled this process after the current K-3 universal screening process. So it's worked really well in the past to have districts send to the state for review by a panel assessments that they found not only address the elements of the legislation, but they found that have been very useful with students. In that process, we were able to then review these assessments to say, yes, we agree. And this, of course, is meeting with the companies and statisticians and all kinds of different people to find out if yes, indeed. And then it also guided districts and assisted districts in learning if what they were using actually did align to the legislation and actually did help collect data that was useful in instruction and helped them in understanding where kids are with reading. So we used that as a model. Also, what we did is we reached out to Massachusetts. They have a curate process in place that they have been using for a while. Our process that we are proposing today is a little different. Massachusetts trains teachers and does, anyways, what they do is a little different. But we once again used many of their key elements in these documents. So for those of you who are familiar with that process, you probably saw that reflected here. We did some consultation with Rhode Island and some other states like Mississippi as well. So just so you kind of understand where we were coming from, we were trying to look at processes that are currently in place in other states that they found useful, as well as using some of those sites and national organizations who have been vetting materials and posting those for districts and individuals to be consulting with. So what I'd like to do is just kind of go through the blurbs here and then turn it over to all of you. So thank you so much. I know I've been talking a lot and I appreciate your listening and tolerating my blabbing on. But here we go. So the why. We need to provide programs. So we would like to provide districts and publishers opportunities to submit their programs for review. Publishers across the nation are very aware of this legislation, and we felt like we needed to have a process in place so that they could then submit for review. As I said, we as the council with the director will be reviewing and approving, reviewing, we don't know how many, but approving at least 5. And the who, once again, is districts and publishers may submit. Then we at the state will be reviewing the documents that you saw in the paperwork. We have a dedicated CSDE curricula design leadership team for ELA, and we will be asking members, Melissa Jenkins is one of those, we'll be asking members if they could be part of this process as well so that we could get that district voice. Goals and outcomes. We will be reviewing and approving these highly aligned curricula programs. We want them to be evidence and scientifically based, as you saw in the documents we sent, and focused on competencies in those areas of reading. The process will begin with the districts and publishers, which was on page 2 of those documents. And we would like to begin as soon as possible. So if we could begin in April, and have districts and publishers have a couple weeks for them to fill out the forms and documents, and then compiling our list to be reviewed, and then coming back to the council for review and discussion. Then the list will be presented to the commissioner and the State Board of Education for review and approval. And then the planned release for June or July of this year, giving districts a year to be putting things in place. Part of the reason that we like that assessment process is that it really forces districts to look at what they are proposing and to see if it actually aligns to what is necessary. So that's why in those documents you saw something similar about how districts and publishers must answer questions about their products that they are putting forward. So what I'd like to do now is to pause and to ask people first about what I summarized here, and then we'll dig deep into the documents because I'm sure many of you have annotated them and may have questions, comments. And please remember, these are really truly drafts. So if you found a typo, if you found something repeated, you know, please, we would like to know that as well, because these are really truly drafts and we wanted to present them to all of you before they went anywhere else. Excuse me.
Melissa, we have hands up. I'll begin with Maureen and then Fran.
Oh, great. Okay, because I was going to say, I'm not sure who went first. Maureen.
All right, thank you. My question is, it was mentioned earlier in these remarks that publishers nationally are aware of this legislation. Was Connecticut the only one that produced this kind of legislation, or is this a national effort to have reading more, I guess, standardized?
So I can answer, and then I can fall on my partners as well, the reading partners, Margie, Stephen. So Mississippi is a state that really surged forward with reading, and they did show incredible gains as a result of it. So this legislation was crafted based on some of the work there. And Stephen, would you like to add?
The only thing I can add from a policy perspective is that over the years, ever since around the time of ed reform and even before, so this is a few years ago now, we've been following the developments across the country, sort of the evolution of our understanding of the teaching and learning around literacy, the components of that teaching and learning, and how it is that we can help resource educational institutions to prepare better pre-service, to provide better instruction on the ground. So we've worked closely with the experts. We learned a lot from Florida in those early years. A lot of the energy there. As Melissa said, other states have expanded their thinking. Mississippi completely turned around when they started focusing on structured literacy. So that's the big picture. There is a national movement, but I know, Margie, that you probably know much more about this because you were one of our early experts that helped us see the big picture.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. What I would say to add to that, and Maureen, specifically with regard to your question about other states, Colorado has had legislation for years, and Colorado has had a list of programs that they approve for Tier 1 as well as for Tier 2 and Tier 3. They also have had a list of assessments that they have approved. And every year they go back to the drawing board, if you will, to make sure that the list is updated with the revised editions of the programs, et cetera. So I would say Colorado's been a front runner, and they've, like I said, have had the Colorado READ Act. More recently, Arkansas has put into place very specific legislation similar to what Connecticut adopted last year. And they also have, and you can go on their website and see the list of approved programs, again, for Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Similar criteria, I think, that Melissa just shared with us. And then, as she said, Massachusetts, though they don't have approved list, they do have this curate process. Rhode Island, as Melissa said, has also put into legislation a process. They do not, I don't believe they're specifying that you have to use one of so many programs, but they have to fulfill a certain requirement in terms of meeting criteria for being aligned to the science of reading. So many states are in the process of thinking about how they can guide teachers and districts.
Does that help, Maureen?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you both, Stephen and Margie. And Fran?
So I am, I think the, the document that speaks to approval of programs is very good and very thorough. My concern is, where's the curriculum in this? To me, curriculum is number one. Program is secondary. Program is chosen to support the curriculum. What are we saying about curriculum? Because I don't see that anywhere, and that is of concern to me. What I would visualize and I know the scarcity of resources at the State Department, but what I would visualize is a statewide curriculum in literacy with programs to support that. But frankly, I don't believe any one program meets all of the needs of a first grade teacher, and I want them to be facile with curriculum. Has that gone out of style, or where is it? I don't see it anywhere in our considerations. Thank you.
Sure. So thank you so much for that. I'm wondering, maybe it's not clear. So when we were writing about curriculum models, do you think it would be better just to state the word curricula? Like curricula and program?
I don't think a hardcore brace, for example, or any program suffices for what it is we want all first graders to know. And what I think has happened for years, including when I was a teacher, we were given a program and said, just follow this program. I believe we should have a comprehensive curriculum that's sequential, that says, this is what kids need to know and understand and be able to do by the time they leave kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. And here are the programs that can support the learnings that we are saying are incredibly important. And that's what I'm not seeing here. I taught in the 70s, and I was given a basal and told to follow the basal. The basal did not suffice for, at that time I had 32 kids in my class. It didn't suffice for 32 kids. I had to individualize and figure out what those kids were missing and go in search of curriculum materials to meet their needs. But I didn't have a curriculum, and I've been a curriculum proponent from day one, that we need something that's systematic and consistent. And frankly, I've been a proponent of having a statewide curriculum that's a model for districts. And I could go into far more depth on that, but I believe that all of our emphasis is on program and not on curriculum.
So 100% agree, and I'm actually going to turn it over to Irene as our Chief Academic Officer. But as a curriculum developer in the district and at the state, 100% agree that curricula is the driving force. Irene?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for that, Fran. The challenge is we have multiple streams of work here. So there is a call to action. There is a sense of urgency per the legislation to identify programs. So I think this is kind of that first wave of the work. But what's also going on at the department is we're doing the model curricula. So then that's where Dr. Jenkins is a part of that work. So we don't have an existing model curricula at the Department of Education that is aligned or really designed by the science of reading, but that's work that's also going on parallel to this work. So I think the two shall meet eventually, and we're working as quickly as possible. But I think what we need to do, because we do have an obligation to the districts to do this process, let's begin with the programs for sure. And then as the design leadership team is working to create model curricula, it will be designed by the science of reading and certainly the Common Core or the Connecticut Core Standards for English Language Arts. So I'm sure we may get some model curriculums that's out there from districts that want to bring that forward, but also we need to understand what our districts using to help inform. This is a very multi-layered process and deep understanding analysis of the state. So I hope that helps, Fran.
It does help, Irene, and my hope would be that we message that the curriculum is the foundation, and the program is chosen to meet the curriculum, and that a model curriculum process. And thank you for that. I applaud you. A model curriculum process is underway. Especially for K-3. I think it's incredibly important, and the two meeting is really important. But right now, I think if this message goes forward, it may be all about program, and I think it needs to be about both.
And I wonder, how would you feel about if we included some sentences about that under the background?
I would be very pleased. I just think we need to lead with that. I don't want people to ever get the idea that the program directs the teaching of learning in the classrooms. I just, absolutely am concerned about that, because I know what I went through as a new teacher. And, to be honest with you, I did my least preparation when I was doing my planning, my least for reading, because I had it all dictated to me from the basal. And I don't think that's the way it should be. I think teachers are creative, wonderful people. And if you have a curriculum that includes all the components of the science of reading, they can interpolate that, use their programs to push that forward, and bring in ancillary resources where they're needed. But I want to hold people responsible and accountable for following curriculum. And I would just ask that be the lead off. As a curriculum developer for many years, and then I'll be quiet. But as a curriculum developer for many years, it was essential to me to get the curriculum down pat and then choose the programs that would complement that curriculum or move that curriculum forward. And for some years, even including the time when I arrived in Bridgeport as the interim superintendent, there was no curriculum. It was all about program, and it just was not the way things I felt needed to be. So it's just my personal thing. And if others don't share it, I'm more than willing to hear other perspectives.
So thank you again. And I know that Dr. Jenkins has her hand up. But I do want to thank you, Fran. I know Fran does need to leave at 2. So I appreciate all that you have shared. Also, my hope is that in the next year, districts do exactly that, much like they're required to do with their Perkins funds, where they have to do a local comprehensive needs assessment. They're doing the same around their literacy. What are they currently using? how, looking at students' scores on reading assessments and saying, is what we're using currently working? Do we need to adjust our curricula? Do we need to adjust our programs? So, this not only is a process to pick programs to move forward and curriculum models or curricula, but also to have districts really lean in and do reviews and say, is what we're doing helping kids? Dr. Jenkins?
I guess I just wanted to share the idea of like curriculum having more than one like definition. Because when I Googled it just now, curriculum is what's taught in school, a set of subjects, content at the high school level to program of studies, a set of materials, a sequence of courses, a set of performance objectives. I know that ASCD put out once that there's I have to go home and pull the book off my shelf, but the recommended curriculum, and I think Lisa Thomas made reference to the Common Core standards. There's the written curriculum that Fran talked about. There's the learned curriculum, what actually happens in the classroom, what do children actually learn. There's the resource curriculum, materials we purchase or people download. There's the tested curriculum. We have the SBAC. I'm trying to think. There's the hidden curriculum. Children can tell you a lot about lockdowns and shelter in place. They can tell you about all the extra things they do in a classroom. SEL becomes a part of the curriculum. So in my experience in readings, like the time I read principal as curriculum leader, they talk about the intersect between the written curriculum, the taught curriculum, and the learned curriculum. So, and that being like the most powerful components. So districts, I believe, still need to write curriculum, but how do we match up products to support the written curriculum? How do we match up products to make sure those discrete skills align to how a child learns to breathe cognitively are supported? Because my only concern with, teachers choosing materials is that they're not high quality all the time. And sometimes we give children materials that put them in a position that may not support their acceleration of their learning, but may set them back. So those are just some of the things I wanted to share, expanding like our understanding, a common understanding around curriculum, and being advocates for what's in front of children and on their desk, and what teachers are using actually develops their little minds, the cognitive, synapses when they're learning to read, and not set them back. One last thought. I actually teach a class at Western, and the students have to implement a practicum with children. And the students, some of them teach middle school, some of them teach elementary, and they're not familiar with how to teach phonemic awareness. They're not familiar with teaching decoding. And I'm talking about they're from wealthy districts. And they say they don't have resources. They don't have a plethora of books, from decodables to small books for teaching comprehension or high interest, low level. They don't have those books. So we're scrambling to put materials together for them, and scrambling to put together a sequence for them of knowing how to teach phonics. So that's another reason I think it's really important, because they're in a class getting their reading specialist certificate, but they're also in front of children. And so that really weighs heavy on my heart. So I do think that some teachers would really appreciate resources. At least those 10 teachers really would appreciate resources. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
So I think, Dr. Jenkins, I really do appreciate your perspective, the practical, on the ground, right, perspective, as well as Fran's thinking too. And that's why I said this is a multi-layered project that we're undertaking, and why it's so important that we're in this space together. What comes first? Program, curricula. Right now, we don't have a good understanding of either one in the field. So we have to start somewhere. So what we're starting with right now is this process to learn what programs are out there that, again, if you look at page 2 in the documents you have, we've clearly outlined what we are committed to and what we expect in any program that's coming forward from the district and from publishers. And if it doesn't meet that criteria, then it's not going to meet our expectation and our commitment to the science of reading, or even scaling this work, right? Even just committing to ensuring that all of our students learn to read, right? So we have to start somewhere. This is where we need to start. And we will continue to do the work related to the model curricula. And again, those two will meet. You are heard loud and clear. Fran, we hear you loud and clear. But again, I think this is the process that we have to set in motion now. And we will continue to do the other work that meets it. Melissa, I don't know if that helps, or if you want something to add, or we just move to the next step.
Well, thank you so much.
Margie has her hand up too.
Right. Yeah. Dr. Gillis has her hand up as well. So what I'm wondering is, we had talked about one of the goals for this group is to actually create goals. And perhaps we can start thinking about, right now this is an immediate need. It has a legislated timeline. I'm wondering if one of the goals could be something around supporting districts. And then really fleshing out, what does that mean to support districts? There currently is professional learning that is occurring. There will be more professional learning occurring. What are you thinking about? What does that mean to support? Is it the understanding that here is curricula, or here are curricula, and here are programs, and this is how programs support what you've written for all the expectation of what all kids will know, understand, and do. So I know we haven't heard from all of our members yet. I'm just wondering if we can write this down in our notes that for consideration as a goal, supporting districts, they're going to be looking at these programs. Well, where does that fit in? How does that fit in? I think there's a lot of questions here that were bubbling up from the group in support of that. Margie, Dr. Gillis, did you have something you wanted to ask? And then we can go back diving into this, because we would like to get this document out, or a document out, to districts and publishers to start the process. Dr. Gillis.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hickey. I would say just really, I agree with Fran 100%, as I think we all do. And it sounds like from what you're saying, Irene, this is going to intersect. And I think that's important, that we show the intersection between curriculum and the programs. What I wanted to say is, I think what's driven this in other states, driven a decision to give districts a list to choose from, is that if you spend time in classrooms, as I and my team do, you see the great variability from classroom to classroom in terms of instruction. And many teachers who are unfortunately going to teachers pay teachers to look for materials to teach children to read. That is the last thing we want teachers to be doing. The very last thing. And if they don't feel like they have the goods to get the job done, and they go to something like teachers pay teachers, that's not a good path, right? So giving them materials, but to your point, Melissa, and this is really important, I see the center's role as guiding now you have the program in your hands, but that doesn't guarantee you know what to do with it. right? What you need is support at the school level, at the classroom level, and people who have a lot of expertise to show teachers what that implementation looks like of that core reading program. Now, core reading programs will come with that support, but we, I think, as the guiding force behind the center, can hopefully, to your point, Melissa, give the director and others, what they need to provide that support to districts. And I think, I can certainly be helpful, having done this work now for 22 years, coaching teachers. What could that look like ideally? What would we like that to look like? So teachers never, ever feel like they have to go elsewhere to find guidance to do their good work.
Thank you, Margie. Dr. Brummett, you did add something to the chat. Would you mind just saying it aloud so we can capture in our notes too, please?
Sure. I think I was just trying to pull together my concurrence with some of the comments that I think it's important for us to state explicitly in whatever documents we produce that though we're going to come up with, I believe, some recommended high quality reading programs, they don't replace a viable curriculum in reading. So I think we wouldn't want districts to have the misunderstanding that you follow this program, you're home free. So if we could explicitly state that, I think that would really make more emphasis and power to the work that we're going to be accomplishing in the coming months.
All right, this is really helpful. Thank you so much.
So we'll go to Lisa and then Fran, and then we're actually going to introduce a partner that's in this space with us about another phase of this work that might help deepen our understanding of what is going out there, what's going on out there in the field, in districts, and in classrooms. So Lisa and then Fran.
Thank you. I just want to share my agreement with what Fran said initially. As I listen, I feel some level of concern that there won't be a curriculum. If we're talking about a statewide curriculum that we might move towards, I hate to think of districts developing their own curricula and then being told that's not what is approved. I know a lot of teachers have done a lot of work around the Connecticut Common Core that was put out a number of years ago in developing curriculum around that. So the way I'm hearing the conversation today just raises that level of concern for me.
Just to validate, I think that is the reality. I mean, districts have a curriculum, a local curriculum that has been designed by the standards or aligned to the standards. And yes, they will have to evaluate that to now see how does it best align to the science of reading and the components that are within the documents. So the reality could be that it does not align, or that they've realized some gaps, or certainly some work that they may not have designed lessons for. So all the more reason why this is such a sense of urgency for us to bring this all together, whether it's the model curricula or a program, or even just having a deeper understanding of what does literacy look like and mean at the district level. So what you're sharing, certainly it will reveal certain gaps at the district level for sure. And we've heard that from superintendents and from curriculum designers. Fran?
I would just reiterate again, I absolutely understand where Melissa and everyone is coming from. And frankly, I'm very realistic. I think the program is incredibly important. And like all of you, I don't want teachers out there on the web trying to find materials. I want the materials available to them. But I do want them to know and understand that there are standards what kids have to know and be able to do in kindergarten, first, second, third, and on in the area of reading. I had a very negative experience in Bridgeport. I had wonderful experiences, but there was one negative one. I had a commissioner network, and there was an outside source that provided the program for that network. And it was so far off the course of what these kids needed for reading. And, you know, there was no phonemic awareness and no phonics. And I just don't want to see that happen. And I also don't want my own experience repeated. I don't want people to have to go look for materials. We want teachers to be creative in how they teach effectively the standards that we want for K through all the way up. But I don't want them spending time trying to figure out what it is that kids need to know and be able to do in each of the grade levels. That's our job as curriculum people. And it's also our job to provide them relevant materials that make that happen. So all I'm asking is that the curriculum and the programs, when this is released, be put together, melded somehow. And again, I'm thrilled that there will be a model curriculum for the state. I think that's long overdue, and I'd love to see that happen. So thank you for the conversation. It really gets me going. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your advocacy. So thank you. We so appreciate your voice. So I know that we have actually ran out of time for our conversation here, but this is what I would appreciate. If you did go through this document and annotate, or you have questions or comments, if you want to scan what you did and send it to Irene and to me, if you want to type up, however you want to do this, we would like to see your suggestions, questions, etc. Because if you do have a question about something or felt something read awkwardly, you probably will not be the only person as we release this to the field. So we would like for all of you, if you've noticed something that seems wonky, or like I said, you know, or even if it's, ooh, this is great, you know, please send us those materials. And I know it's quick turnaround, but I know you've already done this in preparation for today. If it could be by, I don't know, Friday, tomorrow, 5 o'clock. I hate to be, you know, I don't want to stress you out, but I know you've already looked through the documents in preparation. So any questions or comments about that before I turn it over to Irene and our next piece? Margie, you still have your hand up. Is that just a leftover, or do you actually have a question again? Okay, I figured. Thank you. Anyone else, any voices we haven't heard that you would like to say something, question, comment?
Just one thing. Given our discussion today, is it necessary for me to put in writing that curriculum ought to be part of this? Okay, thank you.
No, I'm sorry. I was just trying to give voice to those who may have written something that we have not yet covered. So once again, if you noticed, we wrote the twice, or accidentally said curricula. You know, you look at this document so many times you don't see your errors anymore. You know, or once again, if you read something and you said, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. You know, we really want your feedback. So please send it to us. And if you only send it to Irene, she'll share it with me. And if you only send it to me, Melissa, I'll share it with her. We're going to go over all these. So, all right, Irene, I'm turning it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, great conversation, and it really does help make this process stronger. So I really do appreciate it. Another addition to making this process stronger, I wanted to share, when this all happened and the legislation passed, we wanted to ensure that we understood the research, certainly have a partner to help and assist with that research so that ultimately we can bring that research back to this council. So I wanted to introduce and bring to this space Hanover Services, which you might be familiar with. Many districts use Hanover Services for research projects or just reading through their portal the different research documents that they provide for district use nationally. We had met with them initially to say we need to understand what is the science of reading, what's all of the research out there, and we engaged them in a literature review. We also said, what else could we be doing for districts? So it goes back to what we said, how are we going to support districts in this work? So what are the resources that we could produce based on this research for districts and support them? And then the other question is, how do we know? How might we find out where districts are? And I think that was actually a question presented in the chat of what are districts doing and how will we find out? Is there a way to survey? So again, this is why Hanover Services is here with us today. So I'm going to introduce, I think, Julie first, maybe Emily. If you want to, I think we can see you now, and I know you have a slide deck to share. And the purpose of this presentation is to let you know work that's been done to date, really just to help inform us as a department and help get the center informed as well, but also to assist us in a statewide survey. So Julie, Emily, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and I think you should be able to share your slide deck with us. And then after they're done, we will be able to open it up for questions.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Irene. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for letting us take some time out of your meeting. I know the former educator and me really enjoyed listening to the little bit I got to listen into, and especially the mindfulness of the resources you like to provide teachers. As a teacher who spent a lot of time on Teachers Pay Teachers, it was great to hear that part. So really excited to meet with you. As Irene mentioned, we're just going to do kind of a quick overview of Hanover, a little bit about the work that we're doing. But before we do that, obviously, I want to introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about our background and kind of our role at Hanover. So as you can see, my name is Julie Shenefield. I am a relationship director here at Hanover. So I partner with all of our members that are located within the Northeast. And my role is to mainly make sure that our members are maximizing their membership and are aware of all the resources that we have available. A little bit about my background. As I said, I'm a former educator. I was in education for 12 years, mainly as a high school biology teacher, taught everything from ESOL to IB. Also worked as a school counselor at both the middle school and high school level. And while I was getting my master's in school counseling, I was an academic advisor for undeclared students. So the last 5 years, I've been in client services and really enjoy this role in partnering with all of you and districts and just helping the many issues that are facing our schools right now. With that, I'll pass it over to Emily so she can intro herself.
Sure. My name is Emily Beeson. I'm a senior research advisor here at Hanover Research. My role is to oversee a team of directors managing, designing, and implementing various research methodologies. So I work really closely with all of our District of Education, state DOE partners throughout the country, and I oversee most of our Midwest and Southeast region in partnering with individual school districts. My key priority areas in working with our members are focusing on strategic planning, program evaluation, and equity initiatives as well. In terms of my background, like most of the folks you might ever come across at Hanover, I also have a K-12 background. I taught English learners, taught a couple of different world languages as well, both at the secondary level as well as the university level. But I also have a background in mixed methods research and market research more broadly. So in my role, I kind of marry those two worlds together. And as we get into a little bit more of our presentation, I'll be able to outline some of the specific research work that we've done to date, specifically in looking at the reading initiatives and propelling some of this work forward throughout the state.
Thank you, Emily. And with that, I am going to share our presentation. So can you all see my screen? Okay, I see a lot of head nods.
Yep.
So like I noted, I just want to give a brief overview of who we are and kind of what we do. So as noted, we're a custom research firm. We partner with school districts, private schools, educational service agencies, and obviously several state Department of Education. We currently have over 350 members and counting, and we provide custom research based on the various needs of the school and what we call a sequential queue model. So basically, schools can partner with us on whatever their research needs, and we have a variety of methodologies and experts within our organization that can help support those needs. In addition to that, we also have things like our Hanover digital portal, which Irene referenced. So in there, you can get over 1,200 syndicated reports. There's a data lab in there. And we also have toolkits located in there, and any webinars, or we also host a superintendent leadership council. Those are also recorded and placed in the portal. Active members also get weekly syndicated emails and just ongoing professional opportunities through their membership. And just kind of an overview of some of the research applications that we do. Just wanted to highlight the ones that are on here. But the reason why many of our members partner with us is, unlike many organizations that might specialize in just survey or just data analysis or one type of research methodology, we're really fortunate. We have over 200 analysts and can kind of work on any type of research that our members need. And I think that helps us stand out, and is why a lot of our members join us. So that's basically a little bit about the background of Hanover. And from there, I'm going to let Emily talk about the work that we're currently doing to help support this initiative.
Sure. So earlier last year in 2021, we had partnered with the Connecticut State Department of Education really to support an evidence-based and research-driven approach as we're looking at different literacy initiatives, literacy and reading-related priorities. So as Julie mentioned, a lot of the different methodologies that we have at our disposal, we really leveraged a couple of those to be able to address some core questions about literacy as we're looking at literacy and reading initiatives throughout the state. So the main question that we really wanted to be able to wrap our heads around, again through evidence-based and research-driven approaches, is what is the science of reading at a really deep level? What are all of the different components of the science of reading? What does it mean when we're talking about the science of reading in terms of efficacy, in terms of implementation, in terms of where to prioritize district administrators' time, classroom teachers' time, school administrators, and kind of everything in between. So we really started to dig into what is the current literature discussing in the realm of the science of reading. We then have started to dive a little bit into what literacy programs and practices are currently being implemented throughout the state. We supported the Connecticut State Department of Education in unpacking a little bit of work that had already been done in soliciting perceptions of what current programs are in place, in understanding that there's a spread across most states and certainly across Connecticut as well. And then lastly, one of the areas that we'd like to start digging into a little bit more, and has been a recommendation of a next step, which we'll get into in greater depth a little bit later on in this presentation, is what do teachers and administrators indicate as key literacy focused needs? So really being able to triangulate what is the science of reading, what are those literacy best practices, what is that evidence-based and research-driven literature telling us, and connecting that to what are the needs that our staff, our folks who are in the classroom every day, what are the needs that they are communicating back, and being able to find where can we make some of those connections. So as we started in this work, and on this slide, we'll talk a little bit about the project work that we've done to date. What I've outlined here are 3 key projects that we have recently completed, focusing on that secondary research side of things and unpacking what is the science of reading. So what we did in September, October timeframe was start to unpack what does the current literature define as the science of reading. What is the studied efficacy of using the different components of the science of reading to guide instruction? And what are evidence-based practices for incorporating the science of reading into classroom instruction? So this literature review was really intended to be a deep dive into all of the current literature that's currently available, anything that is peer-reviewed, anything that is from the scholarly literature, anything from reputable organizations publishing on the science of reading, with the intended audience being the folks who need to know the ins and outs and details of that literature to the greatest depth possible. The next step that we took immediately following this literature review was what we call a research brief. So essentially taking a lot of the information that we unpacked and discovered during that literature review and distilling it down for an audience that needs to know some of that information, but not necessarily to that same level of depth and detail. So we created this literature brief on the science of reading to discuss at a little bit of a higher level, what is the science of reading? What are those components? And what are the instructional practices to take to implement into the classroom? And lastly, most recently in February, we had just concluded an infographic, essentially distilling that information down even a little bit more to an audience that needs to know the highest level of information. As we're thinking about, from a state perspective, how do we communicate the importance of literacy? How do we communicate some of these really complex topics like the science of reading out to a broader audience so it can be synthesized down and it can be consumed at that highest level? So this infographic really did just that, synthesizing down to a broader statewide community audience in a way that is going to be the most impactful and highlight only the most critical elements for a layperson essentially to be able to process.
Emily, I'd like to just jump in right there so that the council knows we have these documents and we have not shared them out because, again, we're working in partnership with the council. And we only just met in January and here we are now in March. So we wanted to make sure that you had this time with Hanover Services first to have a deep understanding of how they're supporting our understanding, building our own capacity, the research behind it. And then we can share these documents with you, but they have not been deployed statewide with anyone. So you are hearing this all first. Thank you, Emily.
Sure. And we're more than happy to share out those documents to any folks who might need access to them. And they really do follow that kind of progression of very deep, detailed, a little bit more high level and very condensed. But what I also wanted to highlight from the work that we had done, specifically coming out of that first project, that literature review, that very deep dive, were a series of 3 recommendations that we had identified based on the literature that we uncovered. And the first one being to ensure literacy curricula incorporates the key components of reading, those being oral language, phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, rapid automatic name or letter name fluency, and reading comprehension. But the biggest piece here, while this might seem a little bit intuitive in that first sentence, is making sure there is a synergetic approach rather than an isolated approach to making sure that we are implementing these practices in the classroom in a way that is interwoven. So rather than one week we're going to talk about oral language and the next week we're going to talk about phonics, making sure that there is an interwoven, synergetic approach to all of these components together to ensure that it gives students an opportunity to develop skills coherently and recognize when they do not understand text, to also have the ability to break apart why might that be, and where can teachers plug in a little bit more for support. On the next slide, the second recommendation is to provide district leaders and educators with professional development on reading development components and teaching tools and resources to increase teachers' knowledge of and confidence in and capacity around reading instruction. So it's certainly one thing to present that information and say we should be doing these things, but really needing to take it a step further into how do we operationalize and implement those best practices in a coherent and systemic way statewide. We also, throughout this literature review, started to identify a couple of other states that have been exemplars in implementing some of these practices. One of them being in Oklahoma, implementing science of reading academies. And being able to look at not only what should we be doing, but what are others doing and how are they doing those, how are they implementing those practices well in ways that potentially in Connecticut we could replicate. And then the last piece, or rather the last recommendation that we had shared was developing language and creating communication tools on the importance of reading, foundational literacy, and at-home reading practices that can be distributed to families. Certainly, a lot of that learning happens in the classroom, and a lot of that happens within the walls of the school, but there is a component to at-home reading that directly feeds into efficacy of the science of reading and student success when those practices, those evidence-based and research-driven practices, can also be executed at home. But with the need being, there needs to be a little bit of guidance and support for parents and guardians on how to actually implement those and where to focus their time and effort as they're working with their children. And ensuring that that's happening systemically, or that communication is happening in a common and systemic way, down to the district level, down to the school site level, down to the classroom level. Okay. I can certainly talk about some of the next steps, but if it would be helpful, Irene, let me know if it'd be helpful to kind of pause here and see if there are any questions about any of the project work that we've done to date. Otherwise, I can certainly talk about next steps that we've recommended.
Well, I saw a hand go up, so we'll pause for
Sure.
a moment to answer questions. Maureen?
Yes, and I caught this in the document that everyone that was sent by the state as well. There's two different definitions of fluency. One is just fluency by itself, and then it's letter naming fluency. And I'm wondering why those are broken out. I've never seen them broken out like that before. Is that something that's more recent literature has broken them out, or just a question that I noticed?
Sure. So, and I can certainly address from the literature review side of things. Sometimes it's dependent on what the source is that's discussing fluency. Sometimes it depends on the time frame that was developed, the organization where that was developed. But certainly, if there's anything state specific or any individuals in this meeting who have a little bit of context behind that can certainly jump in. But I know when we've done literature reviews on the science of reading, specifically in this case, it has depended on where's that source coming from, what's the background, and to what extent does it align with the actual science of reading materials down to its core.
Margie, do you want to add? Yeah. Go, Margie, go.
Yeah, so I can shed a little light because fluency was one of the 5 big ideas from the National Reading Panel, and it was specific to passage reading fluency, accuracy, automaticity, and prosody, whereas rapid automatic naming, letter naming fluency is really a specific skill that addresses word retrieval and processing speed, and it's considered a very good indicator of future reading success. So I think a lot of states have looked at both as indicators, but measuring different aspects of fluency.
Thank you. When you call it processing, that makes a lot more sense to me than the two different variations of fluency. But thank you. That does clarify.
You bet.
Emily, I don't see any other hands. So if you want to speak to the survey, and again, for the council, we'll be able to pause and reflect and share additional thinking and hopefully realize this comprehensive approach to understanding the work out there.
Sure. So what we've recommended as a next step, and not something that we've gotten very far down the line into yet, and understanding that this committee certainly should weigh in, but we've recommended proceeding with a statewide literacy needs assessment survey to identify teacher and administrator perceptions of the items that we have listed on the screen here. What are overall perceptions of current literacy programs? What are overall perceptions of program efficacy based on the programs that they are working with and implementing, on literacy instructions, on impediments and needs overall? And being able to proceed with this survey to be able to solicit perceptions both from classroom teachers as well as district and school site administrators. The goal here would be to identify how best to support literacy programming and practices in alignment with the science of reading. So if we take a step back and look at what's that sequence of project work that's already been underway in terms of the literature review side of things. What this really helps us do is identify what are best practices based on the literature review, what practices have demonstrated efficacy in other contexts or in other states and in other areas, and being able to triangulate back to what do teachers and administrators indicate as the needs that we need to examine very closely. And being able to solicit those perceptions can help us identify what should we be doing versus what are we doing now and where are those gaps as identified by those who are in the classroom working with students every day and who are also tasked with supporting their own classroom teachers in program identification, implementation, instruction, and so forth. So on the next slide, there are a couple of details that I also wanted to cover just for an extra level of clarity in terms of what that would look like. So a survey like this would have a target sample of Connecticut district administrators, school administrators, and classroom teachers, like I had mentioned, really wanting to segment results by those 3 respondent groups to be able to understand where are we seeing alignment in perceptions of need, where are we seeing some differences or perhaps some misalignment based on the 3 different roles here, and often being able to segment out by those roles can be very telling. It can also be really telling when we start to segment by different characteristics like region or urbanicity. All of those different components can help us pinpoint what are the needs that are being identified, where are those needs, and who's identifying those needs for us. The research questions in particular, these will feel really similar to the list I had provided. Essentially, these would be core constructs of the survey. Overall, what are staff perceptions of current literacy programs, program efficacy, instruction, and overall needs? That would really be the goal of why we would want to proceed with this kind of survey. And these research questions would help us design a survey that align back to the core constructs that we need to unpack, also in alignment with the literature review that we've already done, so that we can make some direct linkages between the questions that we're asking in the survey to be able to unpack needs and identify key areas for further probing with what should we be doing. And lastly, I mentioned this a little bit on the last slide, but the use case is really the results of this survey will help inform and guide the state and the council in prioritizing key areas of focus, but also understanding what is that starting point? What is the baseline that we're working with? And the intention here is let's collect that baseline data and perhaps conduct the survey on an ongoing basis, be it annually or semi-annually, to be able to say, where are we making strides in the identified needs? Are the needs next year different from the ones identified this year? And how are we going to be monitoring progress? Again, linking back to research-based and evidence-based practices. But with that, I'd like to pause here and see if there are any questions or reactions or anything that I can clarify further. I see, I think, 2 hands up.
Great, thank you, Emily. I'll start with Maureen and then Margie, or no, Margie went down. Oh, no? Let's see.
Mine was a duplicate, sorry.
That's okay. And Margie, no, you're...
No, yes, I do have a question. Thank you, Irene. My question is, do you already have this? Is this survey been created? Has it been used by Hanover or others? Just curious about the nature of this needs assessment. I think it's a great idea. I think it's important to hear from districts, obviously. Just curious if you have the survey already created and have you used it in other places?
So this would be a custom survey that we've not used with other districts, other state departments of education, truly customized back to the science of reading and literacy needs overall within the state. We've thus far began the design of the survey, but have certainly not proceeded with fielding, and whatever the design of the survey would certainly need to be refined, revised, and finalized, approved before anything would go out externally.
Yeah, I mean, I've used surveys with districts and know that there are models out there. Obviously, I'm sure you're very well aware, and I understand the desire to create something that may be customized to the needs of Connecticut and the constituents and the different demographics that we have here. Just curious what you're using to create it.
Sure. So to give you a little bit of background as well, Julie and I are certainly external faces, but we have an entire staff behind us who are our methodological experts. So we have an entire, for example, secondary research team who are experts in conducting literature reviews, benchmarking studies, best practice reports. We also have a quantitative data analytics team that focuses just on data analytics. We also have a qualitative research team that focuses only on qualitative in-depth interviews and focus groups. And lastly, we have an entire survey team who are true survey methodological experts, many of whom are have PhDs in survey design and survey methodology. So oftentimes what we will do is I'll collect some of this information and start to produce a design or a recommended approach methodologically for what a survey may entail. And our survey team will then partner with us to actually design what that survey should look like, rooted back in survey design best practices.
Thank you.
Dr. Jenkins?
I'm just wondering, will the survey collect demographic data? Because Connecticut actually probably has like 3 distinctly different demographics, like, are you going to collect socioeconomic, and could the results be reported out that way to show similarities in need and differences in need to inform districts' next steps with supporting their staff and communities?
So that's absolutely something that we can do in terms of the survey design. One of the critical stages in the actual survey instrument design is how do we want to be able to segment and disaggregate results once we finally have them, and backwards design from there. So oftentimes when we're working at a state level, especially when we're looking at teachers and administrators, being able to understand what are the demographics of or what are the characteristics of the districts and schools that they represent. Oftentimes it can be very telling when we're looking at percentage of different student populations they serve at a little bit of a higher level, or urbanicity has also come to light with a lot of the state departments of education that we serve when we're looking at what are the differences or how do we segment when we're looking at rural versus urban versus suburban, and those can often be very telling. In this kind of an instance, I would certainly something that we can incorporate.
Thank you. No, that would be interesting to me to look at the results from each district. Because see, I'm from Bridgeport, and we have children from families that may have lower SCS, historically underperforming, and large numbers of linguistic differences. So communities that may not have some of those, all 3 factors in some schools, it would be interesting to see if the results is similar or different. But I appreciate knowing that you're taking that in consideration.
Any other thoughts or questions? So again, I hope that you can see the potential in this process, engaging an open review with districts and publishers, and then running parallel is this statewide scan or needs assessment to truly understand the needs of districts and where they are too in their implementation of literacy programming or just a literacy strategic plan, if you will. And then all of that information would come back to us in review and certainly with the council so that we can collectively have a conversation about that and designing. I think, Melissa, you said it really well, that how might this inform annual goals even? And I think that was one that we said to consider support for districts. And I think this survey can certainly help us do that. Melissa Hickey, got 2 Melissas. I will pause there and see what else you might want to share.
I just want to explain so you know why my head was turned. I have a large screen here and I could much better see the PowerPoint over here. So if I had the side of my face, that's why. Anyways, no, I think I'm all set. Once again, we're really trying to have a multiple pronged approach. As Irene was mentioning, we have the open review for districts and open review for publishers, and then also the survey to be going out to find out what are districts using currently. I think we'll get a flavor for that based on their submissions. But once again, as you saw from the paperwork, the submissions are going to require work. It's not simply that a district or a publisher can say, hey, review this. It's also that they're doing the work and the research to say why this aligns and why this one should be considered by the group, by the council.
I do want to take a moment to thank both Julie and Emily for the early partnership to even just help develop our own capacity around the science of reading. The resources that they did share, again, I wanted to let you know that we'll forward those to you, the lit review, as well as the embedded info brief around the recommendations for us to talk through further, and certainly the infographics. So we'll be following up with you. Margie, I did see your hand go up.
Oh, sorry. You answered my question. I was going to ask for the infographic. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing that.
Perfect. We'll package that together because again, it's to develop our understanding too as a council, because we've all been appointed to this council from for different reasons, and we all have different roles. So I think it helps too that we're in sync with each other with this information. So again, Emily and Julie, thank you. We'll be following up with you. Really appreciate the partnership.
Yes, thank you. It was a pleasure seeing all of you.
Great.
Thank you. So we do only have a few minutes left, and I'm just wondering, for those who have not said much, is there anything that you would like to add? Any questions that you have going around in your head? Any comments? Christine, I see you're shaking your head. You're fine. Okay. I just don't want any voices to be overlooked. Kim? Oh, I just scared somebody off, I think. Or was she? No, okay, we're all set.
I'm still here. I'm just trying to take it all in. I did watch the first meeting, but it's kind of a lot. The only question I did have, and I guess I shouldn't have let them go. So the timing of the survey, is it anticipated it'll go soon? Because obviously we're under a tight schedule. And then the only other question I would have is, it sounds like it could be a lot of work for every district. Do we have an anticipation that we might not get good response from every, the majority of districts? Will they definitely respond, or
to the survey, or respond to the open review? Okay.
To the survey, because it sounds like it could provide really good data.
So I know Maureen, she's a superintendent in a district, so she can certainly weigh in, but in the different conversations we've been having, or the different emails we're receiving, and certainly the groups that we're talking through, everyone is waiting for a place to have a voice and to share. So I think the response would be pretty high. But Maureen, you are a sitting superintendent, so please share.
Well, I would agree, Irene, and I know you've sat in on my teaching and learning committee as well, and that is a group of curriculum directors and assistant superintendents and superintendents, and they're all very eager to get more information, and certainly having input would be, I think, a smart move for this committee. So I would agree with Irene that I'm hoping people will see that as an opportunity and actually complete the survey.
And just to add, yes, I think Melissa and I will be going back to Hanover to firm up the survey and the timeline, and that's something that we can share with you. Yes, it would have to go out soon so that we get that information back to help inform also the open review process. Because then we also have to think now about professional learning. What does professional learning look like to support districts?
So I hope this isn't a really stupid question, but I don't know any brand new teachers. The science of reading, is that now taught in when these teachers are being trained? Is that something that's taught in grad school or as an undergrad?
So that's another piece of our work too, as a council, to understand where is higher ed in all of this work. Where is higher ed in these teacher prep programs? So that, I think that's just another piece to our work together. Excellent question, though.
Yeah, thanks.
So I think, Melissa, I'm going to share, if you want to talk about some next steps, I'll share my screen.
I'm gonna cold call on Stephanie just to make sure that she has no questions, comments, anything going around in your head right now that you would like to share out.
So actually, my question was just very similar to Kim's about like teacher preparation program, because I know when I went through it many moons ago, the certain things were not being taught. So I'm glad that Kim asked that question.
All right, thank you.
And just to remind ourselves, Dr. Michael Coyne from UConn is part of our council. So I think we can present that question so that we can all discuss and go deeper. And I do want to also let you know that it doesn't always have to be us as the council. We can invite others to a meeting to talk through this. So I think that is a good parking lot opportunity where we might be able to invite other executive directors and presidents, certainly of higher ed, to talk with us.
And then we can talk further about the goals. And for the rest of this year, that could be another goal, to do some research into what is currently occurring in our post-sec. And then, as Irene suggested, having some schools come and have conversations around it. So once again, something to consider. Yes, so for next steps, we understand that you didn't really sign on, but you all came to this council with the understanding that we would meet once every other month. With the work that's going on and the program review, we certainly don't want to exclude you if you would like to be involved in that process. So what we've actually done is look at our calendars and come up with a few more days in which either the whole council can meet, or if there's some of you that want to come forward and say, hey, on behalf of the council, I would really like to be part of this review process before we bring the recommendations to the entire council. So once again, we don't want to leave anyone out if you're interested or have the time or both in being deeper in the process, but we certainly don't want to intrude on your time, as you know that the purpose and intent was for every other month. Hey, we'll take you every single day if you wanted to do that as well, but I know you can't, so that's okay. Margie, do you have your hand up, or is that still just a holdover?
Sorry.
It's okay.
I don't use Teams very often, clearly. So my apologies.
It's fine. I just want to make sure that you don't have a question. So here you can see some dates that we put together. And we'd like to have that conversation with you. Yes, about the PowerPoint. Yes, and we will be posting it as well, I believe, online. So, sorry, I tend to get off track when I have hands up and then chats coming through and slides. So anyways, back to this slide. So we have dates that we have earmarked. Wondering and wanting to propose to you, would you like to meet as a whole council? Do you think that there are some people who want to be part of the process, the program review, a little deeper than at just a council meeting? Thoughts, questions? Are there people here who really, Stephen.
The only day I would like to be more involved, more as a learner and as an observer, because I think that there are experts around me that are probably will contribute better, but I would like to be involved. So all of these dates work for me except July 12th, but that's okay because I know we're going to keep minutes and stuff. So I'll be fine. I'd be fine with these dates and with active engagement.
Thank you, Stephen. I think, Melissa, what I'll do, and we heard loud and clear last time, could we have a list of dates so that we could really plan thoughtfully? We didn't want to go meeting to meeting. So, and certainly, as Melissa said, the work, we're trying to accelerate the meeting timeline. So I think what would be helpful then is take the list. I believe it was included in the email to you. We can reshare along with the PowerPoint and along with the other documents from Hanover, and maybe by next week let us know. We have some time before April 26th. April 26th might be an important time for us to be back together so that we can share with you what the review process is revealing to us, so we can at least give you a good update, and maybe we can start digging into what might be some annual goals. So take time. Let's take a week to review this calendar against your own calendar, and then we can firm it up on April 26th. How does that sound? I see. Okay, I see some thumbs ups and head shaking. Okay, great. So
Okay,
with that,
just planning on the next meet. Are we going to have a meeting April 12th though, for sure?
No, what we did, we'll take April 12th off. We'll just go with April 26th. Yeah, because it's already March 24th.
Gotcha. Okay.
And just a reminder, because Melissa and I, we are partners in this work, but just for the sake of coordination and that we're not missing anything, if you do have questions or needs, just email me, myself, and my phone number is there. And certainly we're posting everything to the dedicated website for the Center for Literacy Research and Reading Success. I'm going to stop sharing.
Just so I understand the deliverables moving forward that we're asking for the council. The first would be by tomorrow, 5 o'clock, if you have any kind of edits, questions, etc., about the process, the draft process we shared with you today, please scan them, email them, get them to us. Unless you voiced it today, then that'll be in the notes and in my personal notes, so that should be fine. The second would be for everyone to review the dates to see their availability. And then the third would be if you're interested in being more involved in the process for the programs prior to the finals coming to everyone for your consultation and review, please notify Irene. That sound like a plan? Okay. Okay, I'm just writing that down myself. And then Lisa, I believe you had your hand up.
Yes, I'm a little confused by what you mean being more involved in the process of looking at the models.
So actually,
is there
actually reviewing, like sitting with a review team, looking at what districts put in, looking at what the publishers are sending to us, and actually being part of that process, which you don't have to be because you're on the council and it's our responsibility to be going through these documents with the teachers and some of the people on the design leadership team for the ELA curricula. But we wanted to put it out to all of you. If any of you are interested in getting really in the weeds, we welcome you doing that.
So your set of folks, and it would be helpful to me maybe to be sent a list of who those people are. We'll do right now. The plan is we'll do an initial review and then forward to the council your top choices.
Based on, yes, correct.
Based on that review.
Right.
It would just be helpful to know who is doing that initial review.
All right, and we still have to ask and invite people. So we wanted to talk to you all first before moving forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, I know that we're over our time. I appreciate you staying over the time. Anything for the good of the order? Anything before we leave? All right, I'll quote Stephen. Thank you. Thank you all so much for your time, your passion, your experience, your expertise. It is very, very much appreciated.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Irene, for a great meeting.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.